Hey everyone, it's Hamish from the Young Investors Podcast. Myself and Brandon are excited to bring you your weekly rundown of the latest business and investing news from around the world. Now, a quick reminder before we get into the podcast is that nothing in this podcast should be taken on as personal financial advice. If you're ever unsure about your finances or investing, make sure you reach out to a qualified financial advisor. But with that said, let's get into another episode of the Young Investors Podcast.
All right, everyone, and welcome back to the Young Investors Podcast. How you going, Hamish? What's cracking, my friend?
I'm doing well. Yep. I don't know. Another week's gone by. I can't believe we're already in February. It's crazy. I feel like time flies now.
There's like a Twitter page which just updates with like year progress bars, and it acts like a loading bar. And I looked the other day and it was like 7-8% of the year gone. I was like, holy smokes.
Yeah, those things are terrible. It's like, have you seen those like posters people sell where it's like marks off how many weeks of your life you've got left or whatever? It's got like an average of like, those are terrible. I don't know why anyone would do that, where it's like an average is like if you live to like 70 or something, this is how many weeks you have left. And it's like a depressingly small number of weeks.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about those loading bars, like that people show up on Twitter. It's like, don't show me that. I don't want to know that we're already 8% through the year.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Anyway, on that cheery note, guess what we're talking about today, Hamish?
Yeah, executive compensation.
We're talking about executive. I thought this would be actually a really good topic to bring up this week in particular, because of what's just happened with Mr. Elon Musk himself. But there's so much discussion, scrutiny, sometimes anger as well when we talk about executive compensation, how much these CEOs get paid. So I thought that we would make a bit of a podcast about it, talking about some of the examples out there, some of, I don't know, what's a bit egregious, and, you know, whether CEO pay is fair, and also what you should look at when it comes to CEO pay. So that's what we're going to walk through. Should we get started, Hamish?
Yeah, this Elon story is crazy, because I think we just missed it last week, because we were talking about Musk for something else, and then I think we just missed this story. So it is it's good that we can talk about it this week.
And the story is a judge in the US state of Delaware has annulled a $55.8 billion, yes, billion with a B, billion-dollar pay deal awarded to Elon Musk in 2018 by the electric car company Tesla. The lawsuit was filed by a shareholder who argued that it was an overpayment. So Judge Kathleen McCormick found Tesla directors who negotiated the pay package were, quote, perhaps starry-eyed due to Mr. Musk's superstar appeal and did not fully inform shareholders. She said the deal was unfathomable and ruled that it should be cancelled. And so this is once again, as you might imagine, sparked a lot of debate around executive compensation, and for good reason. I'll read you some of the other big name CEOs, what their 2022 pays came out to be. So Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai took home $200 million. Tim Cook, Apple, he earned $99 million. Satya Nadella, Microsoft, took home $55 million. Your mate, Reed Hastings at Netflix, took home $51 million. So there's a lot of big name CEOs, and they take home very, very large paydays. And of course, you can argue, well, is this actually fair? And this is an interesting statistic that I found when I made a video on this last year, I think. But according to the Economic Policy Institute, in 2021, the ratio of CEO to typical worker compensation was 399 to 1. And that's up from 366 to 1 in 2020, and a big increase from 59 to 1 back in 1989 and just 20 to 1 in 1965.
Wow.
So there's no doubt that as time has progressed, the gap, the differential between the average worker at a company and the compensation of the top dog has widened a lot. CEOs are locking in really, really big paydays. And, you know, there's a lot of debate as to whether this is fair. I mean, they are the decision maker. The CEO is the decision maker. So you do also, like, I think that 50 million for one person in 1 year or for one equity award or whatever, like, that's a huge number, Hamish. It's a huge number. But if they got paid $50 million, but the decisions that they made within the company generated an extra, say, $1 billion of profit, is that worthwhile? What's your take on that kind of line of thinking?
Yeah, I can't say that I've looked too much into the history of how this has changed. Like, let's say in the US, like kind of the numbers that you've just this kind of mentioned, 20 to 1 in 1965 to 400 to 1. I don't know too much about the history of how that's changed over time and the maybe the growing power of the board and how that's kind of influenced that change. So I don't know too much about that, but whenever I hear kind of, I don't think you can read too much into specific numbers. Kind of like 50 million sounds like an egregious amount, or, a CEO making 100 times the average employee sounds like a big number. But I think you're right. I think you have to kind of, there's a little bit more nuance there, depending on how much of an impact that person is having on the overall outcome of the company. But I can't say I've looked too much in the history, and that is fascinating, though. I will actually have to look deeper into, because that is a dramatic shift from 20 to 1 to 400 to 1. You'd have to imagine there's some kind of core reason behind that. So I'll have to look at that.
There is actually, and I can spoil it for you a little bit. Well, one of the core reasons is because a lot of CEOs and boards have worked with legal teams, and what they figured out is that a way to sneakily kind of elevate CEO pays is to compare the CEO's pay to a group of peers, of peer CEO pays. And what they generally do is they make modest elevations across the board, and then that enables the peer group to look bigger. And then the next person, Elon Musk, can say, well, look, actually, my pay, I want to, it's just a little bit more than the peer group. And then Tim Cook's, says, look, mine's just a little bit more than the peer group. And then the peer group slowly rises. And then that's kind of how this has risen so much over a short period of time. But what do you think, like, more just around the general ethics of, sure, 50 million might be a huge number and it's more money than any one person ever needs, but do you think it's fair that someone would get paid, say, $50 million if they were able to generate maybe an extra $1 billion in profit? Yeah. Do you think there's an argument for the justification of some of these numbers for CEOs based on performance?
Oh, of course there is. I mean, if you were the sole shareholder of a company but you weren't the manager, and you could hire someone for even $100 million, and they were going to increase the value of your shares by $2 billion, that's a fantastic deal for you as a shareholder, even though you're paying them an enormous amount of money. So yeah, of course you can justify it. It's just a matter of whether the board is kind of sneaking through these increases where there isn't any new value being generated for the shareholders, or there could be more value in them putting that additional money into the everyday employees that are actually kind of the engine of the company, and increasing value in that way. It's not just about the people at the very top earning more because they're making the key decisions. How about like the well-being of all of the thousands of people or millions of people sometimes that are working in the company? So I think you can justify it, but again, it depends on the specific situation or the specific company.
It is a bit case by case. You're definitely right there. So let's look at a case, Hamish. Speaking of which,
let's look at the
and
case.
let's go back. Let's look at the case in question, which is Elon Musk's compensation. And this is an interesting one because we were talking Tim Cook 99 million, Satya Nadella 55 million, Sundar Pichai 200 million. Then there's Elon Musk, 55.8 billion. At the highest payout level, 55.8 billion with a B.
Yeah.
That is the biggest payday that we'll likely ever see for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And so we've got to look at it and ask, well, is this just absolutely egregious, or is even a $55 billion payday potentially justifiable? I don't want to don't want to skew your opinion one way or another, I'm going to give you the facts. Okay. So it was in 2018, he was granted 304 million options structured in 12 tranches or 12 levels or 12 slices, which was worth a maximum payout of 55.8 billion. So it wasn't assured that he was getting paid 55.8 billion. That was the maximum he could achieve. And each tranche or each level that of payout came with rigorous performance criteria. So he would get paid only if Tesla hit a series of market cap and adjusted EBITDA milestones. But for now, I'm not going to focus on the revenue kind of section of his compensation, more just the market cap milestones. So the award says, quote, Elon will receive no guaranteed compensation of any kind, no salary, no cash bonuses, and no equity that vests simply by the passage of time. Instead, Elon's only compensation will be a 100% at-risk performance award, which ensures that he will only be compensated if Tesla and all of its shareholders do extraordinarily well. The performance award consists of a 10-year grant of stock options that vests in 12 tranches. Each of the 12 tranches vests only if a pair of milestones are both met. To meet the first market cap milestone, Tesla's current market cap must increase to 100 billion. For each of the remaining 11 milestones, Tesla's market cap must continue to increase in additional $50 billion increments. Thus, for Elon to fully vest in the award, Tesla's market cap must increase to $650 billion. And remember, this was written at a time where Tesla's market cap was 59 billion, full stop.
Yeah.
That was it. So they're essentially saying Elon could get, he could get $55.8 billion, but only if Tesla's market cap grew from 59 billion to 650 billion. So it's a big jump. It's a big jump. Now that is obviously a ridiculous sum of money, as we've discussed, 55.8 billion. But here's the thing. Tesla's market cap today, he got this incentive package. They dangled the carrot. And to his credit, Elon Musk worked incredibly hard. And today, Tesla's market cap is $593 billion. And in fact, it was around $1 trillion in late 2021. So he actually flippin' did it.
Yeah,
he
crazy.
actually did it. I mean, it wasn't just him, obviously, but a big part of it was his leadership, his hard work, and his decision making. Yep. And even just looking at the stock today, forgetting about the hitting $1 billion in 2021, even just looking at the stock today, his leadership has seen investors 10x their money. So now I ask you, Hamish, with those facts...
Yeah.
Well, you could say yes or no. Like, you could say yes or no.
Yeah, I mean...
Are you okay with Elon Musk earning $55.8 billion if you, the Tesla shareholder, as a result of him earning that money, have just 10x'd your money?
Yeah, I mean, you as a shareholder, you certainly can't say that he's kind of... I don't think you can say that he's like ripped you off as a shareholder, because you've done, especially if you held the stock from back then. I mean, if you've been buying along the way, maybe you haven't done as well because the stock has retreated, fairly considerably. But you can't really complain. I don't think if you've held the stock for a long time. But at the same time, it is still an egregious package if you just, compare it to any other package ever.
Yeah.
But, as long as... I don't know. It's hard to say.
Give an opinion. Go on.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
I'll give my opinion if you give your opinion.
It's a ridiculous pay package. I would be annoyed that he got paid that much, but at the same time, the stock has done incredibly well. So, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Think?
Well, this is interesting because I am a Tesla shareholder, so this directly impacts me. So the board announced that they would essentially be gifting Elon Musk $55.8 billion. But I'm sitting here in, February 2024. So I've been holding the stock since 2017. So I'm sitting on, more than a 10x based on Elon's leadership. Not entirely, but it's a key part of the success of Tesla has been his leadership. So I'm sitting here thinking, I'm looking at this judge nullifying his pay package because it was egregious, and I'm saying, what? It incentivized him to go out. Sure, it's a bonkers pay package. No one person needs that amount of money. You can make that argument for sure. But it incentivized him to go out and do something that is very rarely seen in the stock market.
Yeah.
To get that kind of company performance out of an automaker, a new upcoming automaker in the United States, that's just unheard of.
Yeah, I absolutely don't think that they should have nullified or avoided the compensation package. I think that's kind of insane because
especially when it was agreed upon by Tesla shareholders.
Yeah. And at any point, if you disagreed with that pay package, you could have sold Tesla stock and you would have been way worse off than if you held it. Like even if you disagree with the board's decision to pass this back, how many years ago was it? I don't remember. But back
2018.
a few years ago, 2018, you could have just sold Tesla stock. Like that was your choice. It's a public company. You can just sell the shares. So I think it's kind of ridiculous, especially because the person who brought the suit, I think, has 11 shares or something like that. It's like 10 shares. And I think they've done this with a number of other companies. It's a strategy that like this law firm basically does. Like they find one disgruntled shareholder, even if they don't represent what the actual shareholder base wants, and they can file a suit. And that's basically what happened. So that I certainly disagree with. I think that's kind of ridiculous that a court is ultimately deciding a contract that was settled, 5+ years ago.
Yeah. I think in simple terms, if I came up to you at home, any of you guys at home, and I said, look, I'll give you $1 billion if you make me 2, then I'm all for that. I will pay you $1 billion if you make me $2 billion. That's like, I'll sign that deal every day. But yes, it is a very odd, and the craziest thing, as I said, is that this pay package was approved by Tesla shareholders. It's not like Tesla shareholders said, no, because then it wouldn't have gone through. They said yes. They said, yes, please. Yeah. And in doing so, they've made a lot of money. But with that said, I wanted to get to this second part of this podcast, which is talking a little bit more broadly about CEO compensation. And it's particularly, we wanted to talk through what investors, what we should actually look out for when it comes to CEO compensation, because all this stuff is in the proxy filing. So you can actually look in great detail at how the CEO is compensated, for what milestones, what conditions they get their compensation, how do they earn it. So Hamish, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about what you watch when it comes to CEO compensation?
Yeah, and you did just mention it for US companies. The proxy filing, the proxy statement is where you'll find all of the information about management compensation and shareholder and big shareholder ownership and management ownership of the stock. And I think compensation is probably one of the most. It is kind of one of the more tricky parts to go through when you're looking at companies. I certainly find it fairly complex, and there's often every company has their different structures for their different compensation packages, and they can be complex sometimes. Maybe by design so that you don't look too closely, but it can be tricky, and you kind of just have to take your time and kind of go through it. But there's a few key things that I would kind of look out for, and most of these things are principles that I've just kind of taken from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. These are kind of little tidbits, generally speaking, that have come from their Berkshire meetings and their shareholder letters that they've kind of done over time. So if you want to go deep on this stuff, that's the source material. The first thing that kind of stands out is looking for executives that have really high equity ownership, which sometimes is accompanied with the founder still being the leader in the company. And this is kind of the first one that's kind of listed here, but it's also, it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the principles, which is you want a management team that is deeply aligned with the shareholders. And the main way that an executive team can be deeply aligned with the shareholders is if they are shareholders, if their personal wealth is on the line. And it's actually why I actually really like looking at founder-run companies, because not only do they generally own a lot of stock, They care about the company, and generally, it's where most of their wealth is. Like if they're running a multi-billion-dollar company and they founded it, generally speaking, 90%, maybe 99% of their wealth is in that company. So their own wealth, their own livelihood is completely tied to the stock, and they built the company, so they probably have some, they care deeply about the company beyond just making their salary. So, founding the company isn't a necessity, but certainly high equity ownership is really valuable. Avoiding high salary or no stake CEOs. That's kind of the flip side, I guess, of high equity ownership. As you start to go through a lot of companies, you'll see a lot of varying compensation packages. And sometimes you'll just see a CEO that's earning millions of dollars in cash salary. And if you look at their share ownership, they don't really own that much stock. So they're earning a lot of cash, and they're earning millions of dollars in cash, and you know that they're investing it because they're probably not spending millions of dollars every year. So they're choosing to invest it in other companies rather than the company that they're responsible for. And that's a big kind of red flag if they're, just earning a lot of cash and not putting it back into the business. So
definitely. That's one of the things I hate the most. It's just companies, it's just CEOs just making a mozza in salary, but not putting their money where their mouth is. That's what it is. It's just not putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah,
that's what gives me the ick, as they would say, as a shareholder.
Nice. Avoiding CEOs that get bonuses for doing nothing. There'll be all kinds of different bonuses and structures that you'll see. So avoiding CEOs that seemingly just get money for doing absolutely nothing in the company.
It's like the bank CEOs in the 2008 financial crisis. Remember that? All of the major bank CEOs took home, they all got fired or they all left, but they took home with them multi-million-dollar bonuses. For what? For sending the companies bankrupt, for destroying the world's economy. Sure. Yeah, have a bonus, mate.
Well done. Here's a gold star.
Yeah, actually. Sorry.
Yeah. So okay. So let's talk about types of compensation. So generally speaking, if you'd ask Warren Buffett, he'd say he wants to see mostly performance-based stock awards. So stock awards meaning they're earning most of their compensation in actual stock rather than in cash or stock options, which I'll talk about in a second. And performance-based meaning it's not time-based. So they're not just being given stock because they're there for, it's not time-vested stock. They're not just getting it for being at the company, which sometimes is a component of compensation, but it's mostly performance-based. It's tied to something intrinsic about the growth of the business, which ultimately will drive the stock for investors. Looking at things like, is it tied to the return on capital or return on equity, some kind of efficiency assessment, how effectively are they investing in the company, tied to profit or cash flow, and then kind of the key business indicators depending on what the company is. So, I'll talk about like Starbucks as an example, growing their sales at existing stores is very important. So their compensation in part is tied to that figure. So those are kind of the main things. Watching out for compensation tied to per share figures. Per share, it's not a bad thing if it's tied to per share figures, but just watch out for it because management can be a bit sneaky in making the per share figures look better than they are. By doing share buybacks, for example, they can spend a bunch of company cash, make the earnings per share go up because the number of shares go down, and then hit their compensation milestones, even though the buybacks might have not been a good thing to be doing at that time. So just watching out for little things like that. Stock options, you'll see is very, very common for executives to be paid in stock options. And, there's good elements and bad elements to this. I think they can be good if executives are using them to build ownership in the company. So that's an important thing to watch is what are they doing with these options? Are they just receiving options and then selling them immediately? What are they actually, how are they behaving? And the same thing actually applies for stock awards as well. Are they receiving stock awards and then just selling them all immediately, or are they accruing kind of ownership in the company? Buffett's main problem with options compared to stock awards is that options basically mean that executives benefit from the upside, but they don't really have any downside risk if the stock falls. So that's a big difference between that and stock awards. If the stock rises, they can execute the options and make a profit. If the stock falls, they just don't execute the options. So they don't have that kind of same downside risk as if they actually receive a portion of their compensation as actual stock. And that's kind of Warren Buffett's argument for preferring companies that pay out actual stock rather than these kind of options to buy stock in the future.
Very good.
Yeah. Those are kind of the main. I thought you were going to jump in there. Those are kind of the main things that I look for. But again, I think the main lesson when it comes to analyzing the management team is just taking the time to really understand how they're being compensated, because it will be different for every company. And the proxy statement isn't as standardized as the annual report, where there's these key sections you can look for. You kind of just got to go through it. And make sure you.
It's usually very long.
Yeah,
lots of pages of text, summary compensation tables, and this, that, and the other. It really just does come. In my experience, it really does just come down to reading, and get a pen and paper, and at the top of the paper, just write down: does the CEO's incentives align with long-term shareholders? And then. Jot it down. Like you, Hamish, you've done a really good job at obviously identifying, all of the different ways that a CEO is compensated: salary, bonuses, equity awards, options, blah, blah, blah. So just go through. My tip would just be write that sentence at the top. Does the CEO's pay align? Does the CEO's incentives align with long-term shareholders? Write down each way that the CEO is compensated. How much, like what percentage of their compensation comes down to their salary, what percentage of their compensation comes down to their, stock awards, and then just try your best to think through whether they are being paid for the right reasons, which is for long-term company performance, growth, long-term shareholder return.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would add is combine looking at compensation with the behavior of management when it comes to their own ownership of stocks. So combining those two things. So what are they receiving, and then what are they doing with it? Are they retaining that ownership, or are they just selling it immediately? Because if they're earning millions of dollars and they're selling the stock, they're not putting it under their mattress. They're putting it in other companies, so or other investments. They're choosing to invest somewhere else rather than the company they control.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Very good. Definitely let us know. What are your thoughts on executive compensation? How do you guys go about assessing it? What do you think about these high-paid CEOs? Is it too crazy? You just can't get behind some of these paydays? Do you think it's fair if they can, put forward good company growth? Be super interested to hear what you guys have to say. So definitely let us know. Let us know in the comments over on YouTube. Let us know in the Spotify question box. But apart from that, guys, that will just about do it for today. That is our wrap up on executive compensation. Thanks very much, Hamish, for joining me as always.
No worries.
That was good. And with that said, we'll see you guys next week.
See you guys.
See you later.